Howdy folks, Spencer here, and today I'm going to be breaking down the stats of the Shrike Intel Juggernaut from Season 3 of Star Trek Picard. As always, chapters are listed down below. The first thing I want to take a look at is cost and availability. This is going to be launching on PC this Thursday, November 16th, and if you're over on console, it'll most likely be dropping sometime around the middle of the winter event, so around the middle of December. Now, this is unfortunately an Infinity promo ship, meaning that it is going to be expensive to acquire, and once you get the Shrike on a character, it is just unlocked for that character. So if you're not familiar with how the promo ships work in STO or what the drop rates are for them, I do have a video, which I'll have linked down below, that does go over just how atrocious the drop rates are for these promotional tier ships. Now, if you already have an Infinity promo ship choice pack on you, that pack will automatically update once the patch goes live. That includes the Shrike, and you'll be able to use your existing pack to pick the Shrike up. If you don't want to gamble for it, you can also acquire it via the player exchange or through trade channels if you want. And of course, if you don't want to pay for it at all, you can get it as a free option from the event campaign in 2024 and any future event campaigns that happen after that. And heading over to the ship stats, do keep in mind that they have only just revealed the ship on 10 forward, so there's no stats blog out yet as of me recording this video, so we don't have the exact mobility or defense stats like turn rate or hull modifier. We don't have that information yet, but I will cover that when I get around to reviewing the ship. Now, this is an Intel Juggernaut. It has a 5-3 weapon setup, 4 device slots, and for its consoles, it's got 4 engineering, 2 science, and 5 tactical. Now, being a Juggernaut, it does have a built-in innate Juggernaut Array, which I'll talk about here in a few minutes, and this ship does appear to have a cloak. It looked like the icon for the battle cloak on the stream, but we'll see for sure once the blog drops for the ship. And for the bridge officer setup, this has a commander tactical with Intel, lieutenant commander engineer with miracle worker, lieutenant commander universal, lieutenant science, and an ensign universal. So it does have a bit of flexibility. The commander intel does mean that you can set this up as a surgical strikes platform. The secondary miracle worker, I'm not as much a fan of. I feel that if miracle worker is going to be on a ship, it should be the primary so that you get that extra console slot. As a secondary specialization, I don't value it as much as the other specializations out there. Mixed armament synergy and narrow sensor bands are cool, but I would rather have a secondary specialization that has some uncons with it or just provides more utility. So it'll work, but it's not my preferred choice for an energy weapon platform. Now, for the layouts on this ship, I do have a couple typed up here for those of you that just want some ideas for a couple ways to build the ship out. So feel free to pause if you want, but there's a cannon scatter volley build, surgical strikes, and beam overload. Now, given that this ship does have the ability to run surgical strikes 3, I would personally always run surgical strikes 3 over beam overload 3. Surgical strikes 3 does perform quite a bit better than beam overload 3, even for a beam array build. So if that's what you're wanting to do, Surgical Strikes 3 would very much be the way to go, in my opinion, on this ship for single target. But if you're going for max DPS, then Cannon Scatter Volley is going to be the winner. And next up, I want to take a look at how the Shrike stacks up against the other Juggernauts in the game and the other ships that have the Miracle Worker Intel spec combo and 8 weapons on them. So starting off with the Juggernauts, the one that you'd most likely compare the Shrike against is the Vaadwaur Juggernaut. The Vaadwaur Juggernaut has a Commander Miracle Worker instead of a Commander Intel, and its secondary spec seat is a Lieutenant Commander Intel, so it's basically just flipped of what the Shrike has. And unfortunately for the Shrike, that is the better combo to have in the current meta. The extra console slot provided by Commander Miracle Worker is hugely beneficial, especially with the recent developments with the isomags. So if you're looking to push energy weapon performance as far as possible, then the Vaadwaur Juggernaut is still going to be the better platform to go with. The Shrike is still incredibly capable. It's going to get you 90 to 95% of the way there. But if you're looking to push things to their absolute limit, then that Vaadwaur Juggernaut is going to be better. And if you're doing Beam Overload, I would also say to take a look at the World Razor Temporal Ops Juggernaut. The World Razor has a Commander Temporal, meaning that if you're doing Beam Overload, you could be doing Beam Overload 3 plus Recursive Shearing 3, which is a very, very powerful combo for that playstyle. So, against the other Juggernauts, the Shrike is not in the best position. It's still a capable platform, but it's not the best. And against the other ships out there that have a Miracle Worker Intel spec combo, the one that I think you should compare the Shrike against the most is the legendary D7 Intel Battlecruiser. The legendary D7 is something you can pick up in the C-Store and get on account-wide unlock for less than what the Shrike is going to cost for a single character. The legendary D7 has a Commander Intel and Lieutenant Commander Miracle Worker combo, just like the Shrike. The difference is the legendary D7 has a Commander Engineer, and the Shrike has a Commander TAC. So there's pros and cons to that. There's going to be the cruiser commands on that legendary D7 that might be more beneficial for some playstyles. But for some of you, you may have a specific build that would benefit from being able to run a Commander TAC ability. So there's pros and cons to both the Shrike and the legendary D7, but they are quite comparable. And one of the other ships that you may want to consider is the legendary Avenger Miracle Worker Battlecruiser. That has a Commander Miracle Worker plus Lieutenant Commander Intel spec combo, and performance-wise, I would say it's going to fit in between the Shrike and the Vaudoir Juggernaut. Now, one of the main perks with the Legendary Avenger is that it's a legendary ship, so if you buy the Legendary Battlecruiser bundle, you can get it on account-wide unlock. And again, like with the Legendary D7, that Legendary bundle is going to be cheaper to get than the Shrike is for a single character. So if you're looking for something for energy weapons that's accessible on account-wide unlock and has really, really good performance, then that Legendary Avenger may be something to consider instead. But if you want to fly the Shrike, to be perfectly clear, that is a very, very powerful ship. It is going to perform very well. It's just that when you compare it against these other ships out there, the Commander Miracle Worker plus Lieutenant Commander Intel combo is just much more desirable in the current meta than what the Shrike has. That Commander Intel plus Lieutenant Commander Miracle Worker still is fine, but if you're looking to push things as far as possible, you want those flipped around. Miracle Worker on a secondary seat is also one of the weaker secondary specializations to have on a ship, which does hurt the Shrike against some of these other ships out there. Miracle Worker's main value comes from being a commander and giving you that extra console slot. Without that, you only have narrow sensor bands and mixed armament synergy to bring any value to Miracle Worker. And against the other specs out there, you're losing uncons, you're losing some of the utility that the other specializations provide. So it's not the best spec combo, but it is plenty more than what's needed to get through anything in the game. And next up, I want to take a look at the accessories on the Shrike, starting off with the Shrike Juggernaut Array, which is built right into the ship. This is a Polaron-based Juggernaut Array, meaning that it should be buffed by any plus Polaron buffs on your build, including from isomags or TAC consoles. And this will hit the targeted foe and deal damage to any other foes within 4 kilometers of that target. And the damage it does increases the further out foes are from the targeted foe. And unlike most of the Juggernaut arrays in the game, the target does not need to be directly in front of you in order for this to work. So as you can see on this clip here from the 10 forward, this target is to Kale's left, and he is able to fire it.
About this thing, working on it, and
so that is the effect from the Juggernaut array on the ship. That green ball there is the radius of the explosion, and again, the further out a target is from your primary target, the more damage it will do, up to that 4 kilometers. So it's an interesting array. I'm curious to see how it stacks up performance-wise against the other ones out there. The other Juggernaut arrays have actually been pretty good performance-wise over the years, so hopefully this one performs as well, given that it does work differently than the other Juggernaut arrays out there. And next up is the Portal Weapon Console. This has passives on it for plus 25.6 Cat 1 all damage, pretty high for a console, and plus 17.1% hull capacity, which will be a pretty nice buff for anyone using Tyler's Duality. Now, the clicky on this will create a portal in front of you and your foe that attacks and ships can pass through. This can allow you to surpass the 10-kilometer firing range. Your pets and torpedoes can move through it, and if it's turned off early, then it will recharge faster. So it does look quite interesting. The fact that it can extend your firing range does mean that there's going to be some interesting applications for this console. The passives on it are good, and the clicky on it does look quite fun. So we're going to have to see how this turns out. They have stated that there is a couple of issues with it that may still need to be fixed by the time it goes live, but they've spent a lot of time working on it over the past couple of weeks trying to get everything sorted out. So hopefully it's not too buggy when it releases. And here's what it looks like in action. So it creates a portal in front of you and your foe, and you can go through the portal. Your weapons can go through the portal. Your pets can go through. It's a pretty neat mechanic, and it looks really cool here. So you can see Hale's weapons there were actually shooting through the portal to hit the foe. Let me play that again here for you. So if you keep an eye on the turrets from a ship, what you'll see is that they go through the portal rather than directly targeting that Kazon cruiser. So not everything is going to be able to go through the portal though. I think they stated that like some of your exotic abilities might have issues with it, but your weapons, torpedoes definitely should work. Mines probably won't because of how the logic is with them, but it does look like it's going to be an interesting mechanic to play around with. And next up is the Starship Trait Eclectic Collector of Armaments. This will give you bonuses per type of attack used. Using different kinds of attacks, each grants plus 10% bonus damage, Cat 2, and plus 10% faster recharge for capital ship innate weapons for 30 seconds. So if you do damage with beams, cannons, torpedoes, capital ship innate weapons, universal consoles, and experimental weapons, each of those can net you a stack of this trait. Now, the stacks will only refresh from doing the damage that the original stack was gained from. So if you have beams and cannons on your ship, you would have to fire a beam and cannon again to get both of their respective stacks to refresh. Now, it's very important to note that the recharge speed effect on this is only for capital weapons. So things like lances or arrays that are built into the ship. I have seen a lot of people getting very hyped up about this trait, thinking that it means that there's going to be 10% firing cycle haste for their weapons, and that is not the case. Each stack is going to get you plus 10% Cat 2 bonus all damage, so that part will impact your weapons. But for the recharge part here, that is only for capital weapons. So if you see people saying that this is a haste buff for all weapons, they are misreading what this says. And next up, I want to give a pre-launch assessment of the potential meta impact from the Shrike here. So the Shrike is a good energy weapon platform. The issue is though, is that the setup on it is not capable of displacing or really matching the existing meta do platforms like the Vaadwaur Juggernaut, the Legendary Avenger, the Inquiry, or the Delkina. All of those platforms are still going to be better than the Shrike. The console on the Shrike does look quite interesting though. I think that there's some interesting applications for that extended firing range that it can offer, and the teleport that those portals have may be beneficial in some situations. The Starship Trait also isn't that bad, but it's also not, like a top 7 or even like top 10 meta trait to me. It'll be nice for those of you wanting to speed up the recharge time of your built-in lances or Juggernaut arrays, but outside of that, I don't think I would put that on most of the energy weapon builds that I'm running. And lastly, I want to recap everything and answer the question of whether or not I think the Shrike is worth picking up. I think that the Shrike is an extremely capable energy weapon platform for cannon scatter volley or surgical strikes builds, and I think that any energy weapon build on it is easily going to breeze through any content that the game has. However, this ship does fall behind some of the meta do platforms like the Inquiry, the Legendary Avenger, the Delkina, and the Vaadwaur Juggernaut. And even though it does fall behind those top options, it is still a very, very capable ship. The issue is that it is a promotional tier ship, meaning that it is very, very expensive to acquire. You can go in and pick up the Legendary Avenger with the Legendary Battlecruiser bundle and get that on account-wide unlock for less than what the Shrike is going to cost for a single character. So there are better platforms that are cheaper, but the Shrike is still a very, very capable platform that will be very fun to fly. And as for the accessories, the built-in Shrike Juggernaut Array doesn't appear to have the same requirements as the other Juggernaut Arrays, which require you to be directly pointed at your target for you to hit them. Rather, it will just let you click a target and launch it, so even if the target is off to your left, you're able to fire it, and it will just fly to the target and do its explosion. So a bit easier to use than the other Juggernaut Arrays. We just have to see if that results in lower damage potential. The Starship Trait off this is also interesting for those of you that like to fly ships with built-in lances or Juggernaut Arrays, because the Starship Trait will allow you to lower the cooldown on those built-in capital weapons. And for the console, that is the accessory that has the most potential in the meta, in my opinion. It will allow you to create portals between yourself and your target, potentially allowing you to extend your firing range further than 10 kilometers, and also giving you a way to teleport between two locations. So it does have some interesting potential applications, and we're going to have to see just what it's capable of once it goes live later this week. Overall, as for the Shrike being worth it, I do think it looks like a very fun ship. The cost is the only issue. Thankfully, we're not too far off from 2024, so if you don't want to gamble for it or you don't want to pay a ton for it, then you will have an opportunity to get it for free next year if you want. And, as for going in and picking it up now, I think if you have the in-game assets to get it, sure, that's how I'm going to get mine. I sold a bunch of isomags, I got lucky opening promo packs, and that's how I'm going to get this ship myself. But if I didn't have those promo packs and I didn't have the EC, I don't think I could justify putting $100 in for it at this point in the game, especially with all the recent events. At that point, I would rather, if I'm putting in $100, I would rather get something like the Legendary Battlecruiser bundle instead, because the Legendary Avenger is a better ship than the Shrike. And you're getting it on account-wide unlock alongside the Border SKU and a T6 coupon in that Legendary Battlecruiser bundle for $78 during a sale, during a 35% Legendary bundle sale, versus the Shrike, which may cost you, 100, 200, maybe even $300 to get if you're trying to gamble for it. So I think going for the Legendary bundle that gets you account-wide ships is going to be better than spending, potentially 2 to 3 to 4 times that to get a ship for a single character. So that's my thoughts on it. It's up to you if you want to dump the money in for it. I know some of you are going to go in and gamble lots of promo packs anyways, regardless of what I say. But personally, it doesn't change the meta really enough to me to really justify going that crazy about it. The console is really the only thing that has any really long-term meta potential, in my opinion. And for all we know, it may end up just being a gimmick once we get it, and it just doesn't perform the way we think it does. So there's some interesting aspects here, but as always, we're going to have to wait and see. And of course, wait a couple weeks or months and see if they decide to tune anything downwards. So that's going to be it for today. Again, thank you to all channel members and viewers for the continued support. I'll see you guys around.